Hey there, and welcome to Photoshop 301, Section 4 on Smart Objects. In this section, we're going to show you the advantages of using Smart Objects when editing your images. Now, Smart Objects basically allow you to work non-destructively. They work by basically creating a copy of an object that's referenced externally. So no matter what you do here to edit your image, you still have your original intact. Now, this allows you to do things like transform your document without losing detail. You can also use smart filters with smart objects that can be edited at any time. We're also going to show you how to place embedded and linked smart objects so you can work on one file and have it automatically update a bunch of files at the same time. Alright guys, smart objects are really helpful when working in Photoshop. Let's go ahead and jump into Photoshop. We're going to start off by opening our image. We're going to hit Control-Command-O. Let's go to o4smartobjects.tiff. There we go. Hit F for full screen, and then we're going to give you a quick overview of how we actually made this image. So we've got two different groups here. We've got our subject group and our background group. Now our subject group, our first layer here, has a layer mask on it, and basically this is our subject cut out from her background. Okay, so on this layer it's just my subject. Now on the layer underneath we have our entire image, our subject, the stairs, and the shadow. And this is set to a multiply blend mode. Okay, this is allowing the shadow to multiply over anything that's underneath it, including what we've done with our background. So for instance, if I were to grab our brush tool here and grab a red color and start painting here over the background, you're going to see that the shadow actually shows up over top of our whatever we're painting here. In this case, it's the red. So the shadow set to multiply does this effect. Now, if we have that layer set to a normal blend mode, let's go ahead and change this to normal, you can see basically we can't see through it. So a multiply layer will make anything that's white invisible, and then it'll go ahead and darken anything that's a little bit darker. All right, so in this case, multiply is a perfect way to have your shadows show up on the background. Okay, let's go ahead and delete this layer here, show you how our background is created. Now, our background is basically a bunch of color fill adjustment layers. Okay, we're going to start off here with our first color fill layer. Okay, this nice green color. We have a layer mask that's telling it to not be visible here where our stairs are. All right, and then we have another color fill layer with a gradient going from the bottom to the top. Okay, and that's clipped to this layer, making it only visible where the green layer is visible. Okay, and next we basically have the same thing, except for in this case, it's not visible on the background, it's visible where the stairs are. And we're using a layer mask to define that. Okay. Great, so that's how our image is actually made. Now we're going to jump in and show you one of the benefits of using your smart objects, and this has to do with transforming and scaling your images. So to start off, what we're going to do is create a new layer above everything. I'm going to go to Image and down to Apply Image. Okay, we want our layer to be merged. That's going to make sure it merges everything together onto this one layer, and our blending mode is set to normal. Okay. So we can see here's our layer. It's basically just a copy of everything we see on our, there we go, on one layer. And then I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. So Control or Command J to duplicate that. Okay, now one of these layers we're going to convert into a smart object, and the other layer we're going to leave as is. So the layer 2 copy, I'm going to right click here and go down to Convert to Smart Object. All right. Now you can see it's a smart object. We've got a little thumbnail here. This lets us know it is in fact a smart object. And this is basically, it creates a reference image that allows us to not actually edit the original image itself. We're basically editing a reference of that image. Okay, let's go ahead and jump in. I'll show you guys kind of how this works. So let's go ahead. We're going to start off with our first example here, showing you guys how using a smart object maintains image pixel integrity. All right, so let's go ahead and start off by transforming our regular layer. I'm going to hit Control or Command T to transform, and then we're going to shrink this really, really small. So let's go ahead and bring this real small, something right about there. All right, so that's our regular layer. Now we're going to do the same thing with our smart object. So let's click on our smart object, Control or Command T. We're going to hold the Shift key and the Option key. There we go, and we're going to shrink this really small as well. Okay. Now, basically, when you take an image that's this large, okay, and shrink it down, when you're using just a regular layer, an image is basically made up of a bunch of different pixels, which are little tiny squares of different colors. So when you shrink that down really far and then try to blow it back up again, you lose a lot of information. But when you use a smart object, you don't lose that information. So let's go ahead, let's start off with our original layer. So here's our original layer. I'm going to hit Controller Command T. Now we're going to go ahead and scale it up large again. All right, and hit Enter. And there we go. We can see we've lost a ton of information. This is like basically when you try to make something really small, much larger again, you are going to lose because it basically you lose a lot of information when you're making it really small, and then you try to make it large again and it doesn't have that information there present. Now with a smart object, let's go ahead and turn this back visible again. You can see how small it is there. We're going to hit Controller Command T on our smart object. All right, and let's go ahead and warp this. There we go, larger again, and you can see we have 100% of our information back intact. All right, so there we go. There's the non-smart object versus our smart object. All right, let's go ahead and hit undo a couple of times here, get us back to where we were before. So here we have two regular layers. Next, we're going to show you how to warp and scale a smart object and how you have all of your information there stored in this file. So we're going to right-click here, go to Convert to Smart Object again. Okay? So we've got a regular layer and a smart object. So on our regular layer, let's go ahead and do a couple of, we're going to do a couple transformations. Now, I'm going to hit Controller Command T to transform this. Okay? Let's go ahead and make this a little bit smaller. There we go. And I'm going to rotate this around a little bit. Okay, just like that. And I'm even going to go to our warp here, and I'm going to choose warp. We're going to choose custom, and then I'm going to click here in the center and just kind of like stretch it out just like that. All right, so that's quite a bit of transformation to this image. Now, to get this back to where it started, if I hit Controller Command T, it's going to treat this as though this is our original starting place. It doesn't actually store any of those transformations within Photoshop. So, for instance, I'd have to like rotate this back around and like stretch it back out again. There we go. This is kind of difficult. All right, and then I'm going to try to click on our warp, and we're going to try to like pull this back down again. And you can see this is it's very difficult to go ahead and get this back to where it started. Okay, because none of that information was stored when we made those transformations. All right, let's go ahead and hit undo real quick. We're going to do the same thing basically with our smart object. So Controller Command T. Let's go ahead and shrink this down. I'm going to rotate it around, and I'm going to go ahead and warp it. So we're going to do this basically about the same thing. All right, hit that enter box, and we're good to go. Now, let's say I want to get this back to where it was originally. So because I'm on a smart object, I can hit Controller Command T, and here I have actually all of my properties of my transformation. So you can see it's 52% of the original width and height. We've got an angle of 45 degrees. So let's go ahead and change our angle. We'll just change this back to 0. All right. Here our height, we're just going to put this at 100%. Our width, we're going to put this at 100%. We still have that warp applied, but we can go here to our warp, and I can click on None, and it's going to undo my warp as well. So all of our transform information is actually stored within this smart object. So we can go back and change this at any point in time, and we won't lose our place. All right, so that's one of the huge advantages of using smart objects. The next big advantage of using a smart object is having the ability to use a smart filter. So jumping back into Photoshop, we're going to go ahead and delete those layers real quick. We're going to open up our subject group, and now let's say I want to apply a couple of filters here on my subject. So I'm just going to we're going to duplicate that. We've got two different subjects here now. Okay, now one of these we're going to convert into a smart object. I'm going to right click here and go to Convert to a Smart Object. Okay, and then this layer we're going to leave just as is. All right, well, let's go ahead and start off with a bit of a filter here. Let's go ahead and start off by sharpening our subject. So on our regular layer, we're going to go to Filter, we're going to go to Sharpen, and I'm going to go to Unsharp Mask. Okay, now zooming in here, we're basically going to choose our amount of sharpening. There we go, and our radius. We don't want to go too large with this. Let's go ahead and make it a little bit smaller. The larger you go, you start to sharpen large areas, and you kind of like lose your actual sharpening effect. All right, so smaller radius. All right, that looks pretty good. So we can click on our preview to see the before and the after with our sharpening. Okay, that looks great. Now, the sharpening that I just did to my regular layer is actually applied to that layer. So if I want to go back and change that sharpening or maybe like make it a little bit less, I don't have that option now because it's actually applied to that layer. So let's go ahead and take a look at what using sharpening on a smart object looks like. So here's my subject. Now we're going to go to Filter, we're going to go to Sharpen, and to Unsharp Mask. Okay, so using all the same settings there, we're going to hit OK. Now you're going to see something very different here. When using a smart filter on a smart object, now we have our smart filters that show up, okay, with their own layer mask. So I can turn these filters on or off by clicking on this eyeball here. Here we have our unsharp mask, and I can change this at any point in time. So if I decide later, you know what, I want a little bit more sharpening, let's just do that again. I can go to Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. Okay, and now I can go, you know what, let's make this one have a really small radius. All right, and bring our amount way up. We'll bring our radius a little bit smaller. And hit OK. So now I'm actually stacking our unsharp mask. So if I make this invisible and visible again, you can see both of my different unsharp masks are stacked here within this smart object. Now I can also use a layer mask with these different filters. So for instance, if I click my layer mask and I hit Controller Command I to make that invisible, I can zoom in now and I can use my brush tool to paint white, there we go, right on the layer mask just for the filters. So this isn't controlling the layer visibility, this is just controlling the sharpening visibility. So I can go in and say, you know what, only sharpen those eyes, there we go, and that's all that I want sharpened in my image. So turning this off and on, now we're just sharpening the eyes. But I can also say, you know what, that looks good, I like sharpening the eyes, but in this case it's kind of like too much. So let's go ahead and make one of these invisible, all right? And this is the appropriate amount of sharpening. So I can take this unsharp mask and simply delete it. All right, now to edit the unsharp mask at any point in time, I can double click here, okay? And I can still change my unsharp mask at any point in time. So basically any filter that you apply to a smart object, you're able to edit it over time. Not only that, but you can stack multiple filters at the same time and use layer masks with your filters on smart objects. So I recommend basically anytime you're going to be applying a filter to a layer in Photoshop, I highly recommend converting it to a smart object first. It allows you to do your filters in a non-destructive manner. Now we're going to show you how to actually edit what's inside of a smart object. So again, a smart object basically creates a reference file. So here we can see we have our subject copy and we have a smart filter applied. Okay, this is our filter that's applied just our unsharp mask over the eyes. Now, if I want to actually edit what's inside of this smart object, I can do so simply by double-clicking on this smart object. So I'm going to hit F a couple times so we can see what it does. Double-click here, and it's actually going to open up a new document. So this is my object. Now, you can see our original layer mask is actually intact here. If I hold the Shift key, I can click on my layer mask, and you can see I can even disable my layer mask. Okay, so this is basically everything that I did, everything that I used my original layer. Remember when I just clicked on my original layer and I hit right click and went to convert to smart object? This is now stored in this file. Okay, well let's go ahead and do a little bit of transformation. She's got just a little spot here on her ankle. We're going to use our healing brush tool. So let's hit Control or Command plus a couple times. I'm going to use my healing brush tool and we're just going to remove that spot there. We're going to have both documents open so you can see. Okay, so here in our healing brush tool, I'm going to hold Alt or Option, sample up there, and just remove this little area real quick, just kind of cleaning this up. There we go, just a quick example. Now that was actually on our subject layer. If I hit Control or Command S and save this, you're going to see it's actually going to automatically update on our document. Okay, now in that case I actually edited that on my layer itself. Let's go ahead and create a new layer, all right? We're going to create a new layer, and in this case, let's see, I want to try to get rid of a wrinkle here. We're going to get rid of this little wrinkle. So again, Alt or Option to sample this point here. All right, basically I'm just using my healing brush here to copy the texture from the area I'm sampling and the color from wherever I'm painting to get rid of this little wrinkle. There we go. So I've done that on a new layer. Now let's go ahead and zoom in to this document so we can see when I update. So this is on a new layer here. Okay, and if I save this document, Controller Command S, it's going to automatically update on my original. So any changes I make to my smart objects are going to automatically update. Even if I do, on a new layer here, I'm going to just like sign my name, Aaron, Command S to save that out. And there we have Aaron now on that document. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit Command W to exit out of that. And now we have our smart object. So we can make this invisible and visible. And you can see now my name is signed on there. Now let's say okay, down the line, we're like, okay, well, that was actually a joke. I don't want my name signed on that smart object. Really easy to get that edited. All we have to do, again, is double click right here on our smart object, okay? And we can use our layers, simply turn this layer off or delete it, hit Controller Command S to save that out, and it's automatically updated on our document. All right, so anytime you want to make a change to a layer and you want to do it in a non-destructive way, be sure to turn it into a smart object. That way you can make one layer its own basically PSD file that you can create a bunch of different layers on that and then save that out, and it's going to automatically update in your smart object. All right, guys, now we're going to take a look at placing embedded smart objects and placing linked smart objects into different documents. So up until now, we've been creating smart objects from our original documents by right-clicking and going down to Convert to Smart Object. Now, that's really helpful. But sometimes you want to bring in external files and have those external files be smart objects as well. So we're going to show you how to do that. And there are two ways: place embedded and placed linked. Okay, so we're going to start off by our place embedded. So let's go ahead and open a couple documents. I'm going to hit Controller Command O to open. Now in this case, we're actually going to go to our O3 pen tool. There we go. We're going to go to our section 3 pen. All right, and we're going to make this just a little bit smaller. There we go. Show you kind of how these smart objects work here. All right. Now, here in this document, we're going to go to Place Embedded. We're going to go to File, down to Place Embedded. Okay. And here I'm going to choose, there we go. We're going to go to O4 Smart Objects, Images, and I'm going to go to our Flurn logo.tif. So let's go ahead and hit Place. All right. So we're getting the Flurn logo. There we go, and it's placed as an embedded object. So you can see it is a smart object. So we're basically taking an external file and placing it into our document. Now it works in the same way. If I double click here, okay, now we have our Flurn logo. Let's go ahead and say, you know what, I want to go ahead and make this black. Instead of a white Flurn logo, I want it to be black. I'm going to hit Controller Command I to invert that, hit Command S and save it out, and you can see it automatically updates in our document. All right, now let's go ahead and close this out. Command W to close this out. So we've got a black Flurn logo now. Now this document, let's go ahead and do the same thing. So we're going to go to File, down to Place Embedded. All right, we're going to do the Flurn logo.tif. All right, there we go, and put Flurn right there. Looks great. Now in this case, let's say I want to edit this Flurn logo as well. So basically the same idea here. Double click on there. All right. Let's make it a little bit smaller. And you know what? This time I want to make it this nice magenta color. So I'm going to lock the transparency of the Flurn logo. Hit B for my brush tool. I'm going to sample this color here. Okay. And then I'm going to hit Shift Delete and fill that with our foreground color. All right. And because I locked the transparency, it's not going to allow me to paint on any of my transparent pixels. So now hit Controller Command S to save that out. Okay. Now what you'll notice is this smart object only applies to this image. Okay? If I go here and I double click here, we've got a separate smart object. Okay? This is a separate smart object that applies here. Even though they're basically from the same source file, if you go to Place Embedded, it actually embeds that source file in your document, okay? Which will increase file size, and you can't make changes across multiple different documents. So it's still a really good way to have external files in your document, but it's not going to update across many different documents. So in this case, this smart object is linked only to this file, and this smart object is linked only to this file. All right, well, let's go ahead and close these down real quick. So that's placed embedded. Let's go ahead and delete that out, and I want to delete this one out too. So File, and then down to Place Embedded. It's going to embed that image as a smart object in just one file. Next, we're going to take a look at place linked. So place linked is actually really cool. So place linked is actually, it comes with a newer version. They added it to Photoshop CC 2014. So let's go to our flurnlogo.tiff. All right, let's go ahead and hit place there. All right, and we'll go ahead and place it right up there. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing with this one. We're going to go to File. We're going to go to Place Linked, flurnlogo.tiff, and hit Place. There we go. And we're going to go ahead and apply it right over there. And hit Enter. Okay, so now if I decide I want to edit our Phlearn logo, but in this case, let's say I want to just totally change my Phlearn logo, and I want this to automatically apply on all of our documents. This can be really helpful. Say you're in the design phase and you're working on like a logo design, okay? And then you've done mock-ups with like putting the logo on like a business card and a typeface and a header of a website. And then you want to make a change to the logo itself and see how it looks across many different documents. That's when you would want to use place linked. So in this case, let's go ahead. You can see now we have a linked sign here, a linked document. If I go ahead and double click here, all right, and this time we want to go ahead and make some changes to our linked document. Let's lock our transparency, and I'm going to fill it with this color. All right, so Control or Command S to save it, and you're going to see it's going to automatically save across every single document that's linked. You can link 100 documents together using this one file. Okay, now let's go ahead. We're going to create a new layer here. Let's make a marquee selection tool. All right. I'm going to hit Shift Delete and fill this with black. And put this behind our Phlearn logo. Now our Phlearn logo, we're going to convert this back to white. So let's go ahead and lock transparency again. Hit Shift Delete, and I'm going to say fill this with white. There we go. And then I'm going to Shift click on both of these layers. Use my Move tool, and then we're going to align vertically and horizontally as well. All right, so now we'll say, you know what? From here on out, the Phlearn logo has to be white on black. Well, we can go ahead and update this, Command or Control S, and you're going to see it's going to update it across multiple different documents. Now, I can still do all types of transformations and filters to this. Like if I hit Control or Command T, I can, transform that around there. I can add, for instance, I can go to Filter, Blur, and Gaussian Blur. I can put a Gaussian Blur on there. You're going to see it's going to show up as a smart object. And any transformation I make to the original, let's go ahead and make this invisible again, Control or Command S, you're going to see it's automatically going to apply to the linked objects, even if I've done all kinds of transformations to those linked objects. All right, let's go ahead and make the background visible again and hit Control or Command S. So you can see how using a linked object can be really helpful, especially if you want to make a change on one document and have it automatically apply on many different documents. All right, guys, that's the end of our section on smart objects. Just remember, using a smart object will allow you to transform your object as much as you'd like without losing information, because it creates a reference file. Now, you're not actually editing that reference file, you're editing a copy of that reference file. So you can also use smart filters on that reference file. Things like we've used an unsharp mask, we just use a Gaussian blur, and you can go back and change those filters at any point in time. Now, if you want to edit the smart object itself, simply double-click on that smart object. You can make your changes, save it out, and it'll automatically apply on your image. We've also got place embedded and place linked with our smart objects. Now, when you place an embedded file, it goes ahead and makes a copy of that file and embeds it into your current document. So we have a one-to-one. If I edit that file, it's only going to make those changes on that one document. Now, if you place a linked document, it doesn't increase file size, which can be really helpful. And it also allows you to edit one image and have that automatically update across many different devices and many different images at the exact same time. All right, guys, that's the end of our section. Thanks so much. We'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.